Do you think that Liberty University should divest from Israel?
Yes.
Yeah. In the last presidential election, who did you vote for?
I voted for Trump, yeah.
Okay.
I see a huge moral issue between both sides.
He seemed like the candidate that followed more of the biblical standards.
Has discourse and people's frankness in certain discourse changed since Trump became president?
I think things have become more tense.
There's this recent chat that got exposed by a group of young Republicans. Great, I love Hitler. I'd go to the zoo if I wanted to watch a monkey play basketball, referring to black people playing basketball.
They can usurp that ideology to essentially get people who are uninformed and working class people who don't have access to academic material or the resources to research it themselves to their power.
That is literally the basis of why people become socialists. What's up, y'all? It's the Black Menaces. We're undercover at Liberty University. If you remember last time we were here, then you remember that it went super, super well.
I voted for Trump.
Can I ask you why?
He doesn't like gay marriage.
I feel like him being a sexual predator goes with your Christian values. Do you feel like the Confederate flag is racist?
No. It's just become a symbol of Southern pride, and it doesn't hold the racist meaning that a lot of people think it does.
Today we're talking about all the things. Talking about Trump, we're talking about racism, we're talking about the fact that the young Republicans said I love Hitler in the chat. I don't know, twice, you know what I mean? Last time we were here, we talked a lot about Christian nationalism. We talked about the fact that Liberty University uses religion to perpetuate hate, right? To perpetuate hate onto queer individuals, onto black individuals. But most importantly, we're here to talk to people about what they think about the world. Last time was last time. I'm a new man. I have new opinions. Lock in, folks, because Sebastian's undercover again. Consider this a series, because I'm always undercover. The first question is, in the last presidential election, who did you vote for?
I voted for Trump, yeah.
Okay.
I did not vote for either. I probably would have voted for Kamala if I had known what was going to happen.
And what was the number one reason that you chose to vote for him?
He seemed like the candidate that followed more of the biblical standards than the other candidates.
What changes your mind now?
Okay, what changed my mind now, honestly, I was not a fan, but I didn't think it was going to be as bad, but there's no way I would ever vote for him.
Do you feel like there was a disconnect for you in him being following the biblical standards, given his allegations of sexual assault, or given him being fraud legally?
Absolutely, I do feel that, and I didn't vote for him because of his nature as a person. I voted for him more because of his policies and the options I saw in the other candidates.
With Kamala, I think it was rushed. I don't feel like there was enough time for her to develop her plan.
Of course, I don't agree with him as a person and the way that he's lived his life. I don't think that he's following the Lord in that way, but I think in terms of his policies, it was the better option.
I voted for RFK.
Talk to me about that. What made you want to vote for RFK?
Okay, so I see a huge moral issue between both sides.
Okay.
I think that with the Democratic side, there is a huge influx of fighting for social rights, including healthcare, including education, that is being siphoned into the military on the Republican side, and they both hate moderates. What I wanted to do in this last election was vote for a moderate side to kind of separate the two-party system, which Jefferson essentially said is what would divide the country. So when I did that and I found out RFK became best friends with the alt-right, I was like, okay, so this goes deeper than I really thought.
As a student who attends a school where I would imagine you encounter a lot of Trump, very strong Trump supporters, what is that like?
Again, I would say before the presidency, I feel like a lot of people were chill.
Okay.
And then after that, it's you notice so many more people are actually Trump fans than you thought. So it's been interesting.
Has discourse and people's frankness in certain discourse changed since Trump became president?
I would say yeah. I think things obviously became a lot more political than they were before. I think things have become more tense.
Talk to me about those thoughts and you seeing that as somebody who was supporting RFK, also not necessarily wanting to support either side.
Yeah, great question. So what I realized is that Bernie Sanders went on a interview, I forget where, but he talked about how it's an oligarchy through campaign funds.
Yes.
And I realized through maybe social media, I'm not exactly sure, but the other side had more campaign funds and they were able to procure more funding and maybe had more influence that way.
There's this recent chat that got exposed by a group of young Republicans, ages from 18 to 40. And they all were texting a bunch of different stuff, right? And I have a screenshot of some of the messages. And they were basically very Nazi, very racist stuff great, I love Hitler, or I'd go to the zoo if I wanted to watch a monkey play basketball, referring to black people playing basketball. Or everyone that endorsed but then votes for us is going to the gas chamber. Or they love the watermelon people, referring to black people. It
Yeah,
says-
I've
you
seen
saw
it.
this.
Yeah.
Okay, what was your thought in response to that, and do you feel like any of that's reflective in your experience here as well?
I wasn't really surprised.
Yeah.
Um,
Come on.
I wouldn't necessarily say that I've seen any of it, like, as a student, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's what's happening, you know?
And JD Vance said that these were just kids being kids and excusing it as like unproblematic. How do you feel about that?
I don't feel great about that. I think that it's important to also look at like what people are saying on both sides of the party. So I'd be interested in seeing what the other leaders are saying as well. Seeing that does concern me, but I also I love to see sources. So I'd love to see
Okay.
sources on that. Okay.
I mean, I can show you the article. Happily,
Yeah.
it doesn't bother me. You want me to show it to you now?
Sure.
Okay. But I don't know. One of them was 40 years old. JD Vance is 41. So I don't know if you would quantify a 40-year-old being a kid who's saying I love Nazis.
Nah, definitely not.
Does it bother you that like the same people who would self-define as like neo-Nazis or very violent racist people support the same candidate, same person that you support?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we live in a fallen and broken world, and the more that I see that, the more I'm just honestly discouraged. I think there's a lot where leadership has gone wrong, and a lot where America is failing to follow the Lord that we first founded this nation on, and that's God and Jesus Christ. So my concern is certainly that.
Okay.
So thank you for bringing that up.
How do you kind of quantify or justify the idea that like this country was found on God despite it being like founded on slavery and like violent sexism towards women and like violence towards gay people or, you know, fill in the blank, you know, the murder of indigenous people? How do you quantify it being quote unquote founded upon God when that was also the reality? Like those were not God-fearing people.
Again, we live in a fallen, broken world, and there's a lot where in the history of our nation we have not done well to follow the Lord and his commands and how we treat people, how we treat others. So that's something I agree about. That's something that's hard. But I will say, if we go back to the Constitution, if we look back how our democracy was built, it's in the commandments. A lot of those foundational things from the people of the Israelites are the same type and formats that were listed for the Israelites in the Bible. So we see like a lot of congruency between like the Bible and how our Constitution was formed, things like that. We know like some of our founding fathers obviously believed in Jesus, and so there's a lot of faith that went into fighting and continuing to fight the good fight, but I think that's an ongoing battle that we face all the time. I do agree that there are some hard things, but I think at the end of the day we can look at people and say we fail to reflect God well a lot of times, but when we do that well, then we have good rules and we have a good nation. So ultimately it's about sticking to the word of God and not letting our view of people like determine how we view God.
Do you think that Liberty University should divest from Israel?
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Stop investing money in Israel. Yeah. Currently, Liberty University puts millions of dollars in investment to Israel, whether that's study abroad programs or in 2016 they did a $5 million investment in Israel in different programming, whether that's like to send Liberty students to Israel or whatever it may be. But the point of divesting being that Israel has, you know, committed mass genocide for the last 2 years, killed tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Palestinians. A lot of people have been pushing their universities or different organizations to divest from Israel because of that fact.
I currently have no statement on that, as I'm not as educated on that topic as I would like to be.
There's a lot of Orthodox Christians in the Middle East as well who are in the middle of all this, and I think that because the biblical nature of it being a Christian school, it kind of pairs itself with the ideology on the right.
I mean, it's definitely a touchy subject. Both sides think they're right. I personally think that we need to be supporting wherever life is, you know? You need to be supporting whoever has life as their, like, end goal, protecting lives, you know?
What do you mean by that?
I think they're not acting in a Christian way, the government.
It's going to go away from pro-abortion, which is, like, in my personal opinion, I'm very against abortion. They're not looking at things with perspective.
And I think that as Christians, we should be supporting Christian behaviors and morals. And genocide never really gave Christian to me. So.
Never gave Christian, not
Yeah.
once.
They're looking at things like blue versus red, and that's what causes the extrapolations in both areas, in both axes, right? So the negative and positive of it.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't look a ton into politics, so I don't know everything about the Israel situation.
You mind if I tell you a little bit about it?
Sure.
Okay, great. Well, since October 7th, 2023, there was an attack, the Hamas attack, that killed about 1,200 people. About 700 of those people were civilians. Since that moment, Israel has killed at least 80,000 Palestinians, half of those being children, and the majority of those being civilians. And that is really just a stacked on effect of since 1948, if we want to just start from there, that's when Israel declared independence. And when they declared independence, there was about 750,000 Palestinians displaced. And since then, at every different moment, whether it was a different quote unquote war or different attack by, whoever, was it Palestinians or not, Israel has always disproportionately killed tens of thousands of more people, or thousands of more people, depending on the time, than Palestinians have. Palestine has been occupied. Before 1948, it was Palestinian land. Since 1948, there's a good map that shows it where all of the land was Palestinian land, and then since to now, if there was a country murdering tens of thousands of people, do you think you or somebody with ethics should invest their money into that country?
I mean, logically, I would say, no. And I'm not aware of everything that Liberty's putting their money into. And I think that's something that I'm feeling in as a student. I need to be more aware of, what's going on.
How do you feel about that idea that somebody can go into your land, take all of it, and be the one that's considered a country?
Well, I don't know if either one is, morally right. Mm-hmm. There's always been tension in the Middle East. A lot of that just goes back to, biblical terms. If you look at Genesis, that's just, part of how the original Middle East was founded, was just tension. So there's always just something going to be going on over there. I don't know if there ever can be peace, either in the Middle East or pretty much anywhere. That's why I always look to God. He's I can find peace in Him no matter what, in anything, no matter what I'm going through. I just go to Him.
I see.
It's I honestly really appreciate this conversation.
Yeah, and that's what I asked. That's why I asked specifically, because I think we're very normalized to universities or things we attend or work at to invest their money blindly. We don't know where it's going to, and if it's going to people dying, I think we should be worried about that.
Yeah, it's also interesting to me too because we had some captives from Gaza speak at Wednesday convocation, and so just hearing their stories and how they've been hurt and how they have relied on the Lord to get them through that. So I honestly was not aware of that position.
One of the main reasons that people I saw, and I've talked to people on the street, that I saw people voting for Trump was because of economic reasons. Our economy is not necessarily doing better at the moment. It's actually doing worse. We're about to fall into recession. The top 10 billionaires have gotten $360 billion more richer.
Where's your proof on that? What are you sourcing?
Yeah. The top 10 richest U.S. billionaires saw their wealth increase by $365 billion over the past 12 years, including Donald Trump, where he actually doubled his net worth since he's been in office. Yeah, he went from being having $2 to $3 billion net worth to being $8 to $9 billion net worth. What do you think about that? A president, I'll find the article right now as well, but what do you think about the president and the other rich friends of the president gaining a crazy amount of more money while also cutting Medicaid and cutting food assistance for people?
Right, so what you said with it being an economical issue, I think that part of that is correct because it is a capitalistic country and we all want to kind of lift each other up. However, because of the ideological split between the nation on multiple issues like abortion, like healthcare, and so there becomes the moral divide, and they can usurp that moral issue, that ideology, to essentially get people who are uninformed and working class people who don't have access to academic material or the resources to research it themselves to their power. And Donald Trump has been quoted saying, I would be a Republican because they would be the easiest to sway.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with you. That's the basis of class consciousness, right? That is literally the basis of why people become socialists. If I'm a socialist, that's why I'm saying that is the basis of this idea of we have a lot of social issues that are very present and very real that we have to address. Racism or hate towards queer people or healthcare or whatever it is. I have a lot of passions about that as well. And also the working class people, the 99% of us, we're all getting played out by the same billionaires at the current moment. Even whether that's a poor white person or poor black person, it's going to be different because of race. However, at the end of the day, we're both getting played out by billionaires together.
Right, and that's going to be a zero-sum. That's because of the zero-sum policy that Heather McGhee actually pointed out in her book, which talks about the critical race in America. But one interesting point that I think you brought up was the fact that it is socialism. It creates that socialism. And I think that that's kind of the opposite extreme. Whereas what the country really should be going towards is something that is moderated by people who are in a position of power that can be regulated. Because once you get to a certain level of power, it seems to become unregulated. We have all these checks and balances within the House, within the Senate, within the executive office. And for some reason, we're seeing all these checks and balances being kind of they're being diluted in a weird way through different executive orders, different bills that are being passed. An example of this would be like the Farm Bill in 2018, which sought to legalize marijuana, and it didn't in the state of Virginia, but they passed a hemp law, essentially finding loopholes. So regulating what lawmakers can do and get away with is something that will both slow down the government, but also hold them accountable. It's a complex issue, and I don't have the solution for that.
In our nation's history, right? Or just, moving forward, why do you think that it would be beneficial to have God as the compass, given Christianity discriminating against queer people? It upheld slavery. Why should we use Christianity, despite all of its many, many historical, hateful flaws, as the driving force for our country?
I think it's important to actually look into the Bible when it says one of the first things that, while the Bible does describe certain things, it does not condone all things. So we see a description of slavery, but we see that God also does not condone slavery.
Right, but Christians use Christianity to uphold slavery.
I would disagree with that, and I would like to see where that mindset comes from.
Yeah, they literally would change scripture or use it in. That's why there was separate churches, right? The whole institution of slavery was built upon the premise that God's chosen people were white people and that black people were less than humans. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that you could be a Christian and think that black people are worth owning or less than human, or that women should not be able to vote, or that we should just kill queer people. Those are the foundations of what Christianity used to then get us to where we are now. And
I see where you're coming from with that. And I would also agree. And that, again, it comes back to the Bible. When we twist scripture, when we interpret it poorly, when we do not follow the God that we say that we serve, then we misrepresent Christ. And I think that's something that I'm heavily grieved over. I think that's where history has gone wrong. And again, yes, there are many Christians who have walked the walk, but not done it correctly. And that's led to a lot of harm and a lot of hurt. Ultimately, God does not stand for all of that. He is a God that is loving, that cares for all people, created all people, and we're called to love people, yes, to uphold to a biblical standard, but certainly by no means killing people based off our own judgments. It's the Lord's place to judge, and it's our place to tell people about that. Religion
is the number one. More than Trump, more than conservatism, more than anything, it's religion. It's Christianity. However, that's coupled with nationalism. That's the Christian nationalism piece. And when we talk to people here on the ground, there's this mix between thinking that the country should be directed through this Christian ideology, that our founding fathers, that anybody else in the past, the most successful and beneficial people to society have been Christian. That is to negate the fact that Christians came to this land and murdered every indigenous person here. That's to negate the fact that Christians have historically murdered women during the witch trials, have murdered queer people because they were queer, and obviously enslaved black people. Nothing comes to a surprise. However, what's so important about this is that because Christianity believes in grace and that we're all sinful inherently, there seems to be a justification to when Christians are then hateful because they're sinful inherently. That we cannot be good without God. So if you're saved from God, that your actions are then removed despite the fact that you might have called somebody a slur. We were talking to somebody earlier, and he basically said that you get your morals from God, and that he loved everybody, but to be gay was a sin, but he loved gay people. However, those are all very contradictory. You cannot love somebody and believe that their whole way of life should be a sin, or that their whole way of life will deliver them to hell. You cannot love somebody and believe that. The thing is, a lot of people here, I just met somebody who's damn near a socialist. He just doesn't understand it yet. He'll figure it out one day, I promise. He hates capitalism, you can tell. He fucking hates Trump. I believe people are so convincible. People are so convincible. No matter where they are on the spectrum, people are convincible because there's inherent flaws in capitalism. There's inherent flaws in a lot of things, but there's inherent flaws in this system the way it's been currently set up. The system was set up to perpetuate hate onto people. They use hate to push capitalism forward to then create the divisions that we see today, so that the people in power, the rich people that are taking all their money, are ignoring you and ignoring us, that they're ignoring the working class struggles, whether that's healthcare, or whether that's housing, or whether that's food being affordable. It's a big ass truck.
We got mad. Really mad.